Hello, everybody. I'm Skip Alzheimer, and welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Torture You with a Student Film Show. Wow, I haven't gotten a negative reaction like that in quite a while. So occasionally I run across cans of film at thrift stores, or they show up in boxes, or somebody's like, "Hey, I have this thing. You want it?" I'm like, "Sure. What is it?" And it's usually a student film. And student films, as you can see, are mostly not great. I've talked with people who disagree, but a lot of student films are just not great. They're half-baked ideas, poorly executed. They're learning how to use the camera, but film students have to make these student films to kind of work out and learn what they're doing. Nobody's going to start off brilliant. It's rare that somebody does that. So these serve a purpose. Now, do they deserve to live? Do they deserve to be exhibited? I don't know. I would say this. I learned the difference between UCLA and USC's film programs. With UCLA, you raise the money to make your film, you pay for the film stock, you edit it, it's yours. With USC, they give you money and film stock. Well, they give you film stock, but they keep the finished project. And what that means is, so there's a friend of mine who's an archivist, Dino Everett, who's an amazing archivist, punk rock archivist type, in that he is fearless in showing 100-year-old films. He's really great. He's a good friend of mine. He did a touring show where he found student films of John Carpenter, of several known directors who became real directors, and he did a show of their early horror works, and it was phenomenal. I mean, it was, some of it wasn't great, but you got to see kind of like a lot of these students cutting their teeth on these things. Likewise, George Lucas's student film, the THX 1138, blah, 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 I can't remember the total thing, but that beginning student project film that became a feature film, that belongs to USC, and they can license it out and rent it out for people to show, and that kind of helps keep the film program going. Really fascinating to see that. And so, yeah, for filmmakers who turned into something, maybe you can say, I'd love to see their student film. But for people who later graduated and are working in insurance, maybe not so much. So, anyways, that's the thing about student films. And so you saw one, and you had the reaction that many people have. So I have set up on the Telecine, kind of an interesting thing. Being an AV geek, I love films about film. And this next film is, it's interesting because it introduces a technology, I'm typing in the name of it because it doesn't really have a name. It introduces a technology for something that Dino Everett actually found a machine that it's called an EVR. And it was this way, it was kind of like it pretended like it was an early VCR, in that it was basically a machine that had a built-in camera Telecine. Then there was a strip of film that had 2 tracks on it, and it was sprocketless, so it was like a capstan, like rubber wheels would move it through. And you could have alternate programming. You could have part 1, part 2. They did a weird way to do color, and I found this film on eBay and was fascinated by it. But then I actually found one of the EVR reels, and just send it to Dino because he's got a working machine, or at least it was working back in the day. So this is kind of a fascinating look at a failed technology. All right, enjoy EVR demonstration film.
Hold it. Fine.
What you see here is a standard television receiver, exactly like you have in your home or business. However, there is a complete difference, because you are about to view a communications technique that'll do many startling things, such as this. And this. And yes, even this. Hi, I'm Bob Hill, representing Columbia Broadcasting System's Electronic Video Recording Division. I want to thank you for taking time out from your busy schedule to view EVR. It gives me a particular pleasure to bring to you this new communication system. This particular system has captured the imagination of everyone who has seen it perform. There are three basic components that go to make up EVR. The EVR cartridge, which I hold here in my hand, the EVR player, and a standard home television receiver. And in that order, I would like to give you a brief summary as to how they all mesh together to make CBS EVR the communications system that it is. Let's start first, if I may, with the cartridge. The EVR cartridge is very small and compact. It is 7 inches in diameter, 2/3 of an inch thick, and contains 750 feet of film. There are 180,000 individual picture frames here on this film format that I'm directing your attention to. EVR is broken down into two channels, a channel A and a channel B. Both of these channels contain 25 minutes of running time. Therefore, you have 50 minutes of playing time on two monochrome channels, 25 minutes on each track. Now, there are no sprocket holes in the EVR format, unlike other films, which prolongs the life of the product. There is a magnetic sound stripe down the perimeter of the film on both tracks. You can program independently each channel if one desired. Now, in our processing facilities in Rockledge, New Jersey, we can accept the following formats for conversion to EVR: 35 millimeter, 16 millimeter, videotape 1 inch, and videotape 2 inch. All can be converted to one communications medium, and that being EVR. Now, why don't we move over to the player and see the rest of our system. The EVR player is compact and completely portable. Built under the lid of the player itself is a handle for portability. Located on the right-hand side of the EVR player is a simple control panel. In operating the EVR player, one simply lifts up the lid of the player, places the cartridge over the spindle, and locks it in place. It's done automatically. You press the play button, and you transmit a signal to the television receiver. You noticed how simple it was to load the product into the player itself, for it threads automatically through the player. You're viewing EVR in a well-lit room. And examine, if you will, the high-resolution TV image on the screen itself.
Her face is her fortune. And her future. Understand, Dr. Von
EVR, in the installation of the system itself, is extremely simple. All one needs is a thin dime, where you have a lead that comes out of the back of the EVR player that goes direct to the antenna terminals of any standard television receiver. And I'm sure you recall my doing it earlier in the program. Now, EVR can be used in a one-to-one situation. By that I mean one EVR player to one television receiver, or you can use this EVR player for 5 television receivers, 10 or 20. Or for that matter, you can feed this into a standard CATV and master antenna distribution system. Now let's take a look at some of the real unique features of EVR, and makes it one of the most exciting communication systems that there is today. First of all, the still frame capability. I have selected one of the 180,000 frames that I showed you earlier in our film format. And I have selected that particular frame at my own election. Now, built into the face of the player itself is a crawl mechanism that allows us the freedom to be able to go frame by frame through the entire cartridge, 180,000 frames. Now think, if you will, for a moment. This could be a page in the book, a diagram, a bit of information. For example, if you were moving too quickly in a classroom situation or a teaching situation of any type, you could go in reverse, or you can scroll as fast as one desired. So what I'm pointing out to you here is the storage capability of an EVR cartridge is almost limitless, because you've got 180,000 bits of information contained in a small 7-inch cartridge. Now, not only can we go frame by frame, but we can go from track to track, from one channel to the next channel. And if you recall earlier, we showed you Mission Impossible, which you're viewing now, and then we showed you Robert Frost on another track. Very slowly, I will go to the other track and show you Robert Frost. And I mentioned, if you recall, that you could program independently. As you're viewing here, we have Robert Frost on one track, and we have Mission Impossible on another track. What this could be is an English program, and this could be French. This could be the question, this could be your answer. This could be your 1969 line of automobiles, and here is your 1970 line. Complete flexibility from track to track. You can activate the player and continue on the other track if one desires.
David, where the thought comes in, the force comes in, the wild force. My friendship lately in Washington has been very strange to me. It's blundered into, and I'm very much...
I am now going to place the player in the stop mode. I'm doing this so I can explain the very next feature with the EVR system, and that's the ability to seek out other information further into the cartridge. Built into the player is a fast forward and a fast reverse. By pressing the fast forward button, I activate the player. You will see nothing on the television screen, but I will seek out additional information or programming material, whatever the case might be. I then stop the player, activate the machine, and we're well into the cartridge.
Mighty contiguity of shade. That's fun, isn't it, that way? You know, we're taught that they're going to change to the bus.
You can not only go forward, but you can go in reverse. So at your own election, you can recall as much information as you desire, as frequently as you desire, and at your own pace. While the player is in motion, if one desired, you can still go from track to track.
Yes, this is Arnoldo's handwriting.
Why would he plan something like that without letting one of us know?
My husband was always...
I'm going to press the stop button for one moment to make another point and to show you another feature. When the player is in the still mode, there's absolutely no audio whatsoever. Let me do it and show you again the importance of this feature in a teaching situation.
Simpering little romance.
This allows you, the teacher, the instructor, the sales manager, or whomever, the opportunity to interject one's own personality and bring that subject forth. I might add, and you probably already noticed this, EVR is completely silent. You are not competing with a 16mm projector or any other type of mechanical device, nor am I lowering the house lights or setting up a 40 by 40 screen. You're viewing a program on a television receiver that's common to everyone.
What does it matter why he did it? What could work into our plans better?
In order to rewind our programming material, you never have to touch the product. You simply press the stop button and the rewind button. It is all done automatically within the EVR player. You simply open up the lid, reach in to the well, and remove the EVR cartridge, which was the program that you were just viewing, completely sealed and ready for library use. EVR offers you the complete freedom of choice, viewing what you want, when you want it, and as often as you like. I thank you and hope you've enjoyed our demonstration of EVR, a development of the Columbia Broadcasting Systems Laboratories.
Sorry, I was rewinding a film. So let me tell you what I think is wrong with that product. The biggest thing that was wrong with that product is whenever you had that medium shot of him looking at the deck, it said right above him, video recording. And that was not video recording. That machine did not do any type of recording at all. Zero. It was a playback machine. So, one, it's playback. Two, it plays back on video, but it's really playing film. So that's another big problem. Three, for you to release something on this, so the idea is you would have to shoot this on film, or something would somehow be shot on film. Then you'd have to send it to these CBS people for them to format it a certain way so it would be released on these specially proprietary things, which could only be played back on this proprietary other thing. And what a horrible idea that was. Because, if you shot something on film, you can take it to pretty much any film lab in any city. They could process it and make a 16 millimeter or 8 millimeter film that you could show on a projector, that most of which you could buy like locally or buy at Sears or whatever, and not have to go through any of the rigmarole of CBS or any of that. So that was a doomed format. And the whole idea, you can still on a lot of projectors. Well, you can have alternative programming, like alternative language. Well, if you have sound stripes, you can have two languages. But yeah, you can't have visually alternative. But who cares? So, it's an amazing film that documents something that just failed. Just was a bad idea. Like somebody was like, "Ooh, this is great," but to call it electronic video recording, that was the first failure right there. And in fact, I collect audiovisual hippie books from the late 60s and early 70s, and they have, one of the books has a whole chapter about how misleading and how horrible this idea is. And then, of course, so Sony introduced their EIAJ open reel, half-inch open reel deck, which was like a camcorder, and then you had like a bag that had the actual deck on it, super heavy. And that was really one of the first grassroots. You can record something and play back on a TV. The first real recording thing. And that came probably 2 years later. But wow. I'm happy I have that film. And happy to show it to you. I'm proud to have that film. Speaking of television, this next film is by RCA, and it talks about the story of television. And it's like 20-some minutes long, but it's beautifully shot footage. And then at some point, it turns to beautiful Kodachrome or Technicolor color. So here's Story of Television.
The signature of every century has been its skyline. The very ancient, the old, the medieval, the modern. Imprints of man's never-ending path of progress, silhouetted against the ageless canvas of the sky. Our day, our times, our signature, our skyline. Metal fingers beckoning to the invisible, calling to sound the ear cannot hear, and sight beyond the range of the unaided eye. Our era, the era of television. The dream of television had persisted for centuries. The human eye is a miraculous instrument, perceptive, sensitive, forever tuned to the pulsating wavelengths of light. Yet the eye is hemmed in by horizons. It cannot see over a hillside or beyond the haze of distance. To extend the range of human eyesight, man developed marvelously sensitive instruments, binoculars. Giant telescopes to probe the furthest span of space. But always there were barriers, distance. Could man fling pictures to the sky and gather them in at a distant point? It was a provoking challenge. And nowhere did the challenge provoke more unending experiment and research than at RCA. As far back as the 1920s, two men took up this challenge. They shared the irresistible dream of television. David Sarnoff, chairman of the board of RCA. Dr. Vladimir Zworykin, honorary vice president and technical consultant of RCA.
Dr. Zworykin, every now and then I like to put the calendar back and remember another important occasion when you came to my office. You were a good salesman, and I was a good dreamer. We talked about broadcasting moving images by electronics. And I remember that I asked you what it would cost to develop an all-electronic television system. Do you recall your estimate?
Of course I remember. I asked something like $100,000.
Your estimate missed by quite a bit. It cost RCA more than $50 million to create, develop, and introduce America's first all-electronic television system. And since that time, as you know, RCA has spent another $70 million to pioneer and develop the compatible color television system. But how well that money was spent. We succeeded in extending human sight far beyond the horizon.
Yes. This is wonderful thing about television. The extension of our sight. You are better acquainted with this progress, General, than anyone because of your participation and leadership in so many phases of television development. It was nearly 30 years ago when I came to your office with that tube, the first eye of television.
Yes, I well remember it. Nearly 30 years ago. And what a great invention this tube has become. It certainly has fulfilled its destiny.
Well, General, this is the grandfather of the pickup tube. Do you want to see the newest grandchild?
Well, I'm all for grandchildren. Let's have a look at it.
Well, here it is.
Well, this certainly looks very interesting. What do you expect this grandchild to do?
Well, that's what we call miniature Vidicon. And I hope eventually it will replace all the existing pickup tubes for all the purposes.
Well, that's very interesting and certainly very promising because what we need to do is to reduce the size and the cost of these components so that television, color television, both at the transmitting and the receiving end, may be within the reach of everyone. That is my hope.
The turning point came in 1923 when Dr. Zworykin invented the iconoscope. This tube, after years of further development, became the image orthicon, the electronic eye of the modern television camera. In 1929, Dr. Zworykin and his associates announced the first successful electronic kinescope, forerunner of today's television picture tube. The circuit was complete. All electronic television was achieved. It worked. How? The lens of the television camera acts like the iris of the human eye. It gathers in the light rays and focuses them on a mosaic of light-sensitive material that is built into the picture tube. The light-sensitive material converts the light into electrical impulses. a reaction varying with the strength of the light. The optic nerve of the camera picture tube is the electron beam, controlled by electromagnets. The beam scans the picture, which is on the plate, in rapid sweeping motions from side to side, from top to bottom. When the beam hits the image, it loses varying amounts of electrons and then bounces back to the opposite end of the picture tube, where it is amplified millions of times. It is led off to the transmitter in the form of electric current. The signals are broadcast as radio impulses into space. Heart of the receiving set is the kinescope. Here, the action is reversed. The stream of electrons, synchronized perfectly with those of the camera tube, literally paints the picture information on a chemically treated screen line by line. The glow is bright when the beam is strong, less bright when it is weak. Thus, the picture is reassembled. 1931. Atop the Empire State Building, the National Broadcasting Company, a service of RCA, erected the transmitting antenna for experimental television station W2XBS. Now, RCA's technicians and scientists tackled the next goal, improvement of picture quality. Hitherto, using a mechanical process, the best that could be transmitted was a crude signal of 60 scanning lines. RCA turned to the new science of electronics, discarded the mechanical spinning disc, and soon doubled, tripled, then the scanning lines. Now television was really on its way. In 1937, television strode out of the studio with mobile vans developed by RCA and NBC. Versatile, self-sustaining. New eyes, new vision for the world. A man could sit at home, yet his eyes could scan the countryside. A bright new era dawning, a new dimension in communications. Distance reduced to microwaves. Walls, barriers, mountains erased. Television, the ultimate triumph in man's search for sight beyond the range of the human eye. 1939. Television is ready to make its official public debut. The setting could hardly be more perfect. The New York World's Fair. Its theme, the world of tomorrow. And the world of tomorrow became the world of today. The RCA exhibit building, where on April 29, 1939, David Sarnoff stated, "We have added radio sight to sound." NBC cameras probed, explored, scrutinized. Viewers watching the 3,000 television sets then in New York saw the first president ever televised, Franklin D. Roosevelt, officially opening the world of tomorrow. Via television, the viewers toured with the King and Queen of England through Pavilion and Midway. Day by day, television produced new adventures, new vistas, new excitement, new thrills. NBC presented the first baseball game ever televised, August 1939. 1940, the nerve-tingling drama of a national political convention, the first ever televised. Philadelphia and New York were knit together by the electronic miracle of television. Radio relays, pioneered by RCA, and the telephone company coaxial cables wiped out the horizon as the far limit of telecasting. Still in the trial and error stage, television began studying its own future as a tremendous new medium of entertainment. The first programs were simple, unpretentious, proving grounds for technicians, cameramen, directors, writers, and performers. Slowly, the know-how was gained. Bit by bit, creative imagination began to give form and substance to the new art form called television. (1941), a fateful year, war, and the beginning of a 4-year blackout for commercial TV. And television enlisted for the duration. Research went forward at war tempo. At RCA's David Sarnoff Research Center, Princeton, New Jersey, 24-hour shifts explored every corner of the new world of electronics. RCA electronics scientists and engineers made important contributions to the development of radar, sonar for submarine detection, the sniper scope that made it possible to see a target in darkness. Thus, the progress of perhaps a peacetime decade was compressed into 4 short years. 1945, the war over. After 4 years of unparalleled war effort, denial, sacrifice, the American public hungry for the rewards of peace. And television, with its promise of endless hours of enjoyment, entertainment, was part of the peacetime dream. RCA, although by far the leading producer of television sets and television tubes, realized that the future health of the industry required the vital bloodline of competition. So, in a move without precedent in American industrial history, it opened its blueprints to licensed competitors. This was the shot in the arm the industry needed. Television came of age. In the NBC studios, the cameramen, lighting experts, set designers, writers, directors were experiencing, studying, learning the new techniques of a great new medium. Programming was better, more varied, more entertaining. (1949), an historic television first, a presidential inauguration. As Harry Truman took the oath, the event was carried over the 16-city NBC television network, extending from Washington north to Boston and west to St. Louis. Television was moving with giant strides, and in less than half a dozen years, a flip of a switch in master control could send the television image coast to coast. A dynamic industry employing more than 1 million. Television, an unparalleled blending of science and art, invention and engineering, private incentive and public service. By television, American business has found a most effective advertising medium, and in turn, advertising has provided the resources that sustain the standards of programming and permit the never-ending research that is the heart of the television industry. Television servicing alone has become a major industry, employing nearly 100,000 people. Yes, in little more than a wink of time, television has entered our homes, our lives, imprinted new silhouettes on our skyline. And all this has been just the beginning. There was still another dream to be realized, still another dimension to be added. Black and white television had been the herald. It put millions of TV sets into our homes, built hundreds of TV stations, created an industry, an art, a public service, an exhilarating component of our American way of life. It provided the foundation for the next giant step forward. Color. This is a world of color, and the men of television long dreamed of capturing the full paint pot of nature and brushing it on the screen. How could it be done? It was not an easy triumph, as General Sarnoff recalls.
When we first began to think of television in the early 20s, we would have been content if only the rose could have been televised in black and white. That miracle had no sooner been achieved when the eye, sensitive to color, observed that the rose in monochrome lacked its true beauty, and the cry went up for color. Never had scientists been put under such pressure and demand. It has been my privilege and a fascinating experience to watch the scientists at work on color television. I marvel at their accomplishment in bringing into focus the principles of radio, optics, electronics, photography, chemistry, and many other essentials so that they might all work together to make color television practical. I congratulate the RCA scientists, researchmen, and engineers who pioneered and developed this new science and art, and then created the compatible color television system and the famed color picture tube.
Color. Color, the touchstone of reality, the vivid, pulsating miracle that gives substance to shadows. Beauty, grace, and enchantment to a picture. Problem: how to harness a stream of electrons for color. Early, General Sarnoff had set forth the fundamental goals for color television. First, it must be all electronic. Second, it must be completely compatible. These were the goals. The road was long, difficult, but it led to one of the historic inventions of our times, the RCA tricolor television tube, the tube with the heart of a rainbow. The lens of the color television camera collects light rays in full color from the scene being televised. Within the camera, an ingenious system of mirrors breaks down the light rays into television's three primary colors: blue, green, and red. They are focused through the lens system to the special camera tubes provided for each primary color, and the primary color signals thus produced are simultaneously processed for transmission. By the miracle of compatibility, color programs can be seen on standard black and white sets without any change or adjustment. Color receivers, which can also pick up standard black and white broadcasts, decode the color information and apply the picture in all its vivid beauty to the tricolor tube. The world of color. Color captivates attention and brings the beauty of creation close to home. Color transforms the commonplace into the beautiful. It makes the humdrum memorable, gives new power to advertising and merchandising. Color, the fabric of the rainbow riding piggyback on an invisible stream of electrons. The Tournament of Roses in Pasadena, California. Telecast in color by 21 stations of the NBC network in the first west to east transmission in color on New Year's Day, 1954. All the glory, all the reality of nature. With the added dimension of color, television programming probed new horizons. Once again, technicians and artists accepted the challenge. In an incredibly short time, they had devised the techniques to integrate color into television programming. An old word took on new color, new meaning. Spectacular, an adjective made over into a noun. Spectacular, the finest in television programming. Into the home came the greatest in drama, such as The Four Poster, starring Hume Cronin and Jessica Tandy. The list of spectaculars continues to grow to imposing proportions. An entirely new adventure and entertainment for the American public. For compatible all-electronic color television, pioneered and developed by RCA, is counted as one of the outstanding scientific and artistic triumphs of the 20th century. It has added a new dimension to the entertainment arts and has intensified television as a social and educational force. Mobile units, in a coat of many colors, transmit outdoor color telecasts, adding new sparkle and new buoyancy to television coverage of great sporting events. The first World Series ever color televised, 1955. Another color television first, the Davis Cup matches, 1955. Football, the youngest art form, the easiest understood, the liveliest, the brightest. Television in full and captivating color. For I dipped into the future, far as human eye can see, saw the visions of the future and all the wonders that would be. One day through television, the entire world will stream into our living rooms with the velocity of light. Not too far beyond the horizons, international television, to span oceans, capture all the vivid beauty of far lands, bind people of all nations tight together by better understanding, better knowledge, through instantaneous communication of sight and sound. Motion, color, vibrancy, people. In the twinkling of an eye, it is caught by the lens of the color television camera, transmitted by invisible waves to all points of the compass. Atop a million homes, antennas pluck the pictures from the sky, and by a flick of a switch or the turn of a dial, the scene reappears on the television screen. To perform this split-second magic with true fidelity of color, of sound, of reality, this is the wonder of color television. Compatible color television, an historic example of RCA's continuing efforts to open new horizons of electronics for living. Electronics that make life happier, easier, and safer. Television, Truly the miracle that has put its signature on our century.
Wow, such a great film. So this reminds me of another film I have in my collection, which is called American Road, which is made by Ford Motor Company. And most of that film shows early, it's like footage of Henry Ford driving around with other folks kind of camping and exploring the United States, then about Ford manufacturing and assembly lines and stuff like that. Then there was a color segment at the end. And the color segment was always highlighting like whatever new Ford cars were available that year. And so I have at least 2 copies of American Road where the color section is actually different. And it's the way they did it is really cool. So it shows there's this footage of an old car going through a tunnel, and then it goes black. So the screen goes black, and then it comes up, and a brand new car comes out of the tunnel, and it's color. So it's like this, Wizard of Oz transitioning into the world of Oz and the magical. This is now exciting. And of course they've all faded red, but so they end up go through a tunnel and end up in hell of the late 60s and early 70s. But at one point I was trying to compile a bunch of those because the Pearl Archives also has a copy of it, and they have a different color thing as well. So I might still do that. I think I have 3 copies of American Road by this point. Anyways, thanks everybody for tuning in today. I mentioned in the comments that we are looking for shot listers. What that means is that some of the footage that we process and are scanning from our collection, but also from other collectors' collections, we've been clipping up and we've been selling on stock footage sites. Like we have a site, archivalclips.com, but also Pond5, Shutterstock. Those are places that we've been selling clips, and then we basically, if a clip sells and it belongs to a collector, then we cut them in on the revenue a little bit. But in order to do this, we need people to watch the clips and come up with descriptions and keywords, and they have to be formatted a certain way, and they have to be a certain number of keywords and all that stuff. So anyways, we have a good team, but every once in a while, somebody gets a new job, or they move, or they can't do it. So we're looking for a couple more shot lister people. So you can shot list for dollars. Now it's not enough to live off of, but it's good beer money or pizza money or whatever. So email me at avgeeks@gmail.com if you're interested in that. And I have a little test that you'll take, and I'll give you a sense of what the work would be like and all that. Other ways you can support AV Geeks is buy us coffee. As somebody noted when I was in another room when the film ended, sometimes I'm not as sharp and on it when I don't have enough coffee. So your coffee will help make. It won't help when I show student film, because that's always going to happen. And caffeine, no amount of caffeine is going to change how bad a student film is. You can also go to avgeeks.com and see previous shows that we've done and buy DVDs. Just kind of see like we've been doing, because there's a whole lot more stuff out there. And another way you can help AV Geeks is just by telling the world that you like AV Geeks. You can hit like in whatever you're watching this in. You can hit subscribe. There's a notification bell, I think, in YouTube. Commenting, of course. We love your comments and love to see you processing and also looking things up in Wikipedia. That's great. That kind of contributes to why we show these films, so we can get more information and learn more about what we're watching. It becomes actually educational. And then also sharing this with other people that you think would dig it. That's what it's about, is trying to get a lot of eyeballs on stuff. So thanks again, everybody. We will be back again tomorrow. Is that Wednesday? Who knows? Coffee would tell me. But please rewind and love each other, and love yourself as part of that. Things are slowly getting better, but they're also getting hotter. and grosser, and there's a lot of anxiety still out in the world. So take care of yourself and take care of your loved ones and people near you, because we're all on edge. But yeah, we'll see you tomorrow. Everybody take care. Have a good rest of your Tuesday.